Now, there's a lot of information. And basically you could think of each of these as 3 different pieces of information. So what's going to happen is we're going to get 3 different branches to the flowchart. Now, I want to start with the first one. I'm going to start with the first one. And remember, you always start with the given. So the given is angle P and angle M are right angles. And that's going to be given. Now, what do you know about all right angles? They're 90 degrees, so they're all the same. So what can we say about right angles? They're all the same, so they're all, what's the C word that we can use? Congruent. So I could say that angle P is congruent to angle M. And there's actually a theorem that's called the right angle theorem. We talked about that, I think, a while ago. All right angles are congruent to themselves. So I could go into the picture and I could do this. So this first piece of given information stops right here. Can we do anything else with it? Is there anything else that we can say about these angles? Not really. We're kind of at a dead end there. So this piece of given information only gave us this one thing, but it gave us 2 congruent angles, which is nice. Now we'll take the next one. R is the midpoint of PM. Now, what does a midpoint do to a segment? What is R going to do to PM? It's a midpoint, so the midpoint is where? Where in the segment is the midpoint? What do you think the mid stands for? The middle. All right, so if it's in the middle, what can I say about PR and RM? They're congruent to each other. So I could say that PR, segment PR, is congruent to segment PM. And the reason would be the definition of a midpoint. Because a midpoint cuts a segment in half. PR, we're good to go. So now I know that these 2 segments are congruent to each other. Is there anything else we could say from there? Now, I can say from this, I'm going to write over here because it's nice and all I have to do is PQ, segment PQ is congruent to MN, and QR is congruent to NR. That's given. So PQ and MN, I have to put 2 marks there. And then QR and RN. Alright, can I say the triangles are congruent now? So flowchart proof, you'll have to do something like this. Triangle PQR is congruent to triangle MNR. Now, what's the reason why? All right, you can use side angle side. Is there another one that I could use? Yeah, or side side side. Because we could get side angle side from right here, or you could use side side side. Because we have side angle side or side side side. So we actually have two different cases in this one that would actually work. Now, which one's right? They both are. As long as you can prove it and everything is true, you could go ahead and do that. Now, this actually came from a different section. This came from a section where you didn't have side 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 or side angle side. What would be the reason that these two angles are congruent to each other? No. Side angle side is only for triangles. Why would these two angles be congruent to each other? No. Starts with a V. Vertical angles. I didn't hear it, sorry. So these two angles right here would be vertical angles. Now what do you know? What can you say about these two? If these two have to be the same, what about these two? They have to be congruent to each other. They're not vertical, but if that's an x and that's an x, this guy right here is going to be 90 minus x. This guy right here is going to be 90 minus x. So they have to be the same because they're complementary angles. The acute angles are complementary angles. Or you could have used another theorem that you could have used was, remember the third angle theorem? What's the third angle theorem say? If two angles in a triangle are congruent to two angles in another triangle, the third angles have to be congruent. So, right angle, those are congruent. These guys are congruent. These guys have to be congruent. So you could have said that just from there that I proved that all three sides are congruent and all three angles are congruent. And you could have gone that way. So there's actually three different ways. It's nice when you could do side angle side or side 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 because you only have to prove three things. But we could have gone even farther and shown that we had those cases as well. So a flowchart proof is just taking a given piece of information and saying, all right, there's the cause, there's the effect. There's the cause, there's the effect. There's the cause, well, there's the effect now is going to be here. Here's a cause, there's an effect. There's a cause, there's an effect. So we have that cause and effect going all over the place in these.